Welcome to Thrive Talk. My guest today is certainly a heavyweight in his industry. He's the managing partner of PKF Octagon Johannesburg, the CEO of PKF South Africa, and co-founder of PKF Ignite. He's an accomplished individual, yet highly relatable. Welcome, Waldek Wasowicz. Have I said that correctly?
Perfect. Well done,
Not
man.
bad, eh?
Perfect.
Not
It's
bad.
a 9 out of 10.
Thank you. I didn't get 10, but I was close. I'll
Next
accept.
time we will get it right, after a vodka or two.
So,
Yeah.
when somebody like yourself is across the table from me, there's so much I want to know. This show is about shifting business from surviving to thriving and then touching on the role of tech. But somebody like yourself, in your position, you've touched into so many businesses with so much experience. And I'm going to try and touch on little bits of all of it so that our viewers and listeners can really get the best. I want to ask you a question just to start with. In your space, you're obviously dealing with big and small business. You're dealing with mergers and acquisitions. You're touching on a lot of stuff. Which part kind of gets you up in the morning and gets you going? Like, what do you enjoy the most?
Sure. It's a great question and a good one to kick off with. I love the people side of things. So, I always firmly believe that firms and companies such as ours that deal with accounting, audit services, deal with people. And we've got two market forces. One is our own people, and another one is the clients. And usually I think a lot of firms or companies in our industry overthink stuff. We have complicated marketing strategies, go-to-market, projects, etc. But if you really look after your own people and you look after your clients, you usually find you'll have a good firm and you're going to grow. So the things I really enjoy is meeting with clients and interacting with our people. The unfortunate part of being involved in a bigger firm is that a lot of your time is caught up with meetings and different governance structures. But I really love getting down to the coalface and meeting our clients, spending time with them, finding out what issues they have, and it's really about finding solutions for clients. I think ultimately that gives me quite a lot of satisfaction and helping clients kind of unblock those little roadblocks that they have and open up the taps for them, and then to see those businesses grow. And the same for our people. It's really the same to see young talent come through the door and then to spot that potential and to maybe then see what can we do to unlock that in a person. So I probably would say it's when we get that chance to unlock value and unlock potential in either our clients or our people that probably makes me go home at night and say, shit, I had a good day.
That was a great day.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. What a brilliant answer. And what's interesting about that is what you said. I've had discussions with guys who run smaller businesses, and they also talk about unlocking value for the client. Would you say that when you unlock value for a big customer or a small customer, would you say that you're kind of unlocking similar types of value in each one, maybe just on a bigger scale? Or do you think that it kind of ends up like bigger customers, bigger problems?
I think it's a bit of both. I think some problems are endemic across all businesses, regardless of size. I think that maybe different types of problems emerge at different levels. Very often at a small entrepreneurial level, the problems that an entrepreneur might have might be relatively simple to solve. You find that as companies grow, it's probably the complexity of the problems that is a little bit more intricate and pervasive, because usually you find that bigger businesses to a big degree have ironed out smaller issues. Cash flows aren't such a big concern. It's more about the bigger strategies, tax structuring, but very often the human challenges I think get bigger at the same time for bigger clients, where maybe communication in a 5-man team is much easier. In a 150 people team, it's much harder.
Sure.
So you often find that I think it's almost on the two extremes. You find often big companies battle with very big, complex elements, but also very simple things where, it's much easier to run an agile small company than it is to run an agile big company.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. And I'm, as you're talking, I'm getting sort of images from my own life and my own conversations running through my head there. When we talk about the title discussion of the show, and we talk about shifting business from surviving to thriving, big businesses, do they still end up in positions where they need to survive, or do you feel like they're sort of foot on the pedal and in that thriving position? Do you think that they also go through those ebbs and flows, ups and downs?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that the landscape around business is so volatile that, maybe 20 years ago, even when you had a big business of size that was family owned, usually got passed down from generation to generation. These days you look at economic volatility, you look at open markets. Before our markets were relatively closed. All of a sudden now you can import or export anything. You have the emergence of service as an industry, and you can procure services from anywhere worldwide. So I think businesses that were previously very insulated now face global forces, even within our own borders. And that makes it far more challenging. And then you layer that with technological disruption that's coming very quickly. And you very often do see businesses in certain areas and sectors of the economy where maybe for 20 years were very profitable and relevant. Those type of forces start chipping away at it. So I do think it's critical that yes, you can ride the wave, you can surf the wave, and I often say sometimes clients or businesses want to get off the wave as well, which is dangerous. When you're on the wave, it's like U2. When U2 now make an album, it may not be a 9 out of 10, but it's a U2 album.
Sure.
They don't change their sound. They don't go do a 360. So they've got a formula. Red Hot Chili Peppers have done the same. So when they release something, it's a Red Hot Chili Peppers song. And I think often businesses tend to jump waves too quickly, and forgetting how much IP they've built on this wave. But at the same time, you can never stop innovating and adjusting and looking forward. And I think as the pace of technology is increased, it's like a car coming at you. When a car's coming at you at 60 k's an hour, you can jump out of the way when you see it 200 meters away. When it's coming at 150 k's an hour, you need to spot it a kilometer away.
Yeah.
And I think in the same way, business owners, big or small, need to have a much longer viewpoint these days to spot the risks that are coming at them. I think the challenge is often the big guys don't spot the risks early enough, and when they do, they're too big to adjust and pivot, and it kind of hits you straight in the face.
That's actually a very good point. The bigger you are, the harder it is to execute something.
Yeah. So you got to have your viewpoint's got to be so much further out to be able to adjust a big ship, right? It's like a Titanic coming for, once they spotted the berg, they couldn't do anything. You're done. A small boat would have just moved around and gone around it.
And actually on that, a question for you here is, when you've got a small business, take an entrepreneurial business, like where it's sort of founder or owner run, the ability to make a decision is quite easy because often it's the entrepreneur coming up with the idea to make that adjustment.
Yes, yeah.
In a bigger firm, maybe even yourselves, for example, you've got a lot of people. If somebody lower down, we're not judging it, it's more just in the corporate ranks.
Yeah.
If somebody lower down in the ranks has an idea, how do they actually get that up? And because that's something that would help a business thrive, is bringing ideas to the forefront.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to agility in business. And I think in this new day and age, you cannot have the old structures of decision making and hierarchies, because the companies that are agile, that are a little bit flatter and have almost an open source mentality towards ideas, will always outpace and outrun the traditional companies. And I think we've seen it time and time play out over the last 20 years, that new disruptors are coming into industries and just destroying an entire industry and taking that over. Because they work in a very different way. And I think it's very critical that companies of size do look at their structures, because 5 directors will never outrun 100 people who've got good ideas. So you got to, and I think it comes down to culture. You got to have a culture of open conversations, a culture of an ability for people to speak up regardless of title. And I think very often, what we even encourage in our firm is, you might have a team working on a problem. That team isn't constituted according to rank. It's constituted according to the skill set that's required to solve the problem.
Yeah.
For example, when you have IT problems these days, or anything relating to AI or bots, very often it's not the partners or directors who've got the solutions. It's the younger guys on the ground.
Sure.
So yeah, you may in that instance need one or two stakeholders, people who know how to drive policy or strategies, but you want to have a team that can actually do it. So I think it's companies need to rethink their models and the teams and structures that they put together to solve certain problems should first of all have the right people on them, regardless of title. And
Yes.
I think once you start encouraging that, you have an ability for someone who might be a junior guy working in your company for 4 years, all of a sudden he's sitting on a data analytics project with a senior partner. And I think that those are fantastic growth stories. And I often encourage that. I think it's Keith Ferrazzi has written a great book on agility in a modern world. And, I've read it and I loved it, and I've tried to implement some of those policies into our firm.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool book.
I must actually definitely make a note and go check it out. And if you're watching,
It's
any
a good
book that
book.
gets recommended, I always suggest go and have a look.
Yeah.
Inside of your daily role, because you talk about people a lot, which is inspiring, because as a people's person, even had I was telling you off air, I even had a show called The Impressive Human Show, because I'm just a fan of people doing cool things. Do you say that your daily role is to kind of get in there and deal with people all day so that you're bringing the best out of them? Because I know you're meeting with clients, but is that kind of where you lead from the front by bringing the right people?
Yeah, I think it's two elements. I think that I'm a people-centric leader, I think naturally, and I do believe that you can't do it all by yourself, and no one really has the skills to do it all anyway. And we've got some fantastic people in our firm who've got far better skill sets than I do in many areas. So often it's about unlocking that ability for people to add value and for finding that, I love sports or teams performance psychology, and I think in many ways business psychology is like 10 years behind sports psychology. 10 years ago you spoke about mental health in an office and there was a stigma where sports teams all had psychologists already 15, 20 years ago.
Sure.
These days now it's not uncommon to have behavioral people and performance psychologists in big companies, and I feel that a lot of that is coming through into firms, and I really believe that a company is no different to a big team. It's about spotting talent, growing talent, and letting it play out, and then putting a team together that can work cohesively, because often a good player might be maybe not great for company culture.
Sure.
So you got to, it's like an alchemy in terms of building teams, but I think often these days when you look at the role of a leader, it's about nurturing talent and growing talent more than it is about worrying about the small details.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Now that you've said it, resonates with me. I feel like I'm on a good path myself. I want to jump into to the title question then, like specifically. If you put yourself in the shoes of a smaller business or maybe a medium size, but what do you think it looks like to be a business who's just surviving versus one who's thriving?
Well, it's a good question. I think that especially over the last few years, we've seen more surviving than maybe thriving.
Sure.
When you look at COVID, you look at what's happened with lockdowns, the deteriorating rand, high interest rates at the moment, input costs are high. A lot of businesses that were maybe even used to thriving are now surviving just to get through these tough times. I think very often when I look at businesses that do well, regardless of times, it usually comes down to leadership. And I always say that, and it's maybe not in a negative way, that leaders get the companies that they deserve, and very often we tend to blame other factors for success or usually for the demise of or the downfall of a company. But I think leaders need to usually look in the mirror first, and I find the good guys who do well despite the turbulence and the volatility are all good entrepreneurs, and they are inherently positive and solution-based and oriented. I met with a client 2 days ago, and we spoke about all the problems, and at the end they said, you know what, but we're going to do our best, we'll do what we can control, we're not going to worry about what we can't control, but we'll do our best in these circumstances. And I think businesses that thrive usually have a positive mindset good leadership, and this kind of solution-based approach. Because I think for hundreds of years, we've thought the world will end with Y2K and the millennium. Before that, people said the world will end in 1997. Then in the 1960s. So ever since we've been alive, the world's ending.
Yeah.
And I think very often it is a little bit daunting. So it's easy to fall into that trap of negative thinking. I really think you got a positive mindset, and businesses that thrive are the ones that, no matter what challenge goes at them, they kind of just look for solutions rather than to sit there and blame these problems and then to sit back, because that's a recipe for disaster.
Sure. Yeah. Talking of COVID and issues around us, particularly in South Africa, I used it as a reference the other day, was the power outages have actually taken some businesses from surviving to thriving. If you look at the solar guys and people around the industry, I was saying that they don't need to market. Each time the power goes out, the phone rings.
100%,
right?
yeah.
So it's an interesting one, and we were saying potentially they need to look out for the next curve, which is that as more and more people have their solars installed, so they need to move more to the maintenance than necessarily the actual installations again.
No, exactly. So every kind of wave has its end, right? So you can't assume that it's a perpetual business. No, we've had before that. I think the generators were a big thing, right? And
sure,
they still are, but solar has taken that business over. I think wherever you get friction, like in nature, when you get tectonic plates shifting, and you get movement, you get opportunity. And I think the one thing we have in Africa and South Africa is volatility, and that gives you risk, but it gives you opportunity. And I really think it is up to that entrepreneur to spot the opportunity
and to take it.
But often, you need that friction to create that pocket opportunity. Otherwise, the market's very flat, and you find no one can really enter a market that's not moving anywhere. So I think on a positive, there is that element, and I think secondly, looking at it, I think very often we forget the very basic fundamentals. You look at Africa, where we are, South Africa, we've got high growing population. I think 70% of the youth that's being born will come out of Africa, and it is coming out of Africa. 8 out of 10 young people that are being born are coming out of Asia and Africa. So the future of the world, one of our clients, Stefan from Genesis Analytics, fantastic economist, did a video talking about the new world and the old world. And he divides the world not into east, west, north, and south, but into old and new. And we're part of the new world, of the young generation. So when you look at the positive, despite maybe the power cuts, the potholes, etc., Africa's got a massive youth population coming through. And, that's who's going to drive innovation across the world. And in my mind, I think a lot of these problems are not insurmountable. If we look and see what's happened in countries like Rwanda, in Kenya, what's happened even in, look at Australia. Australia a couple of 100 years ago was a colony for felons. And it's how it's, if the worst criminals in the world could become Australia, our power outages and those things are not a major insurmountable problem. I really believe those problems can be overcome. And I often find on our firm side that people who are coming here from European countries and starting businesses in South Africa are inherently far more positive about the economy and about the opportunities than we are.
Do you think it's because they came with euros?
It could be because they came with euros and we're cheap. But I think often the problems that we face are not unique to us. I think often we romanticize and think that challenges that we have are unique. Maybe not to the same degree, but power shortages, expensive power, with what's happened with electricity prices in Europe, are all challenges in Europe as well and in other markets and areas. So I often find that South Africans, we tend to be a little bit more down, and we see less opportunity than a foreigner coming into the country.
In our own space.
In our own space,
perspective.
So you find guys are opening businesses that I would assume a local should be opening, but our guys are almost more worried about taking money offshore, where foreigners are coming in and spotting the opportunities.
Very interesting.
So I think for me it's always a lesson that to say,
That's a super interesting perspective for me, and you're obviously seeing it from from that edge of seeing many businesses all the time. South Africans are super able to survive. Like we're capable of just
Yeah.
going, okay, the power's out, carry on,
Yeah.
you know, plug your laptop in a different way and keep going. But from an investment point of view, that's actually a very interesting perspective, saying South Africans are a bit hesitant to invest in our own space, and then somebody outside is coming in and jumping in. Like we say, it could be because of the power of the currency, just providing more opportunity. But it's a very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
We need to get some more foreign investors into our local tech.
Exactly. And I think, you know, what happens is often these stories are not told in the media, or they're not public. So we only hear of people leaving the country because you might know your friends, but you don't hear of people coming into the country. I mean, I saw now recently there's an article about people coming back, but you don't see about all the business inflows. So, you know, I think yes, there's been a huge outflow of money in terms of stock markets. But I think on a flip side, smaller private equity funds, family businesses are all moving into Africa, because that's the last place for growth in the world at the moment.
Yeah, that's the last.
You're going to grow in Africa. Yeah. Exactly.
What are they tackling? Any particular industries, or is it a variety?
I think a variety. If you look, I mean, we've got global clients across from, you know, medtech, fintech guys into traditional engineering, mining, the normal commodity supplies. So really across the board, that you find. So
so at the end of your two words there was medtech, fintech. So let's talk tech.
Yeah.
So tech is as a transformative. Well, somebody watching will tell me the right word, but the ability to use tech to shift business. What do you think? What's it currently doing? And then my follow-up question is going to be, what do you think will happen to businesses that don't want to adopt tech?
Yeah, look, I think that technology used to be a strategic pillar that people used to have. You know, used to say, these are strategies for the year. Technology is one. I think it's become so pervasive these days that it's actually a lens through which you must view everything. You know, and the one thing we encourage in our firm and our network is that lens of technology, and say everything you do, you should look at it and say, can I do it easier, better, quicker by using technology? You know, whether that's marketing, HR, client-centric tools, or the day-to-day tasks that we're performing. Because I do believe that is one of the biggest single forces that can bring value and unlock value. We've got a shortage of skilled people in the country, and the whole world's got a shortage of skilled people. So the only way that we're going to grow is by being able to do more with the same amount of people. Yes, we'll bring in people from the previously unemployed sector, but that takes time. But you find that very often people moan about the Gen Zs and the young kids, but if I look in our firms and at companies, they're the ones who are driving innovation. They using Chapter GPT, Copilot, they bring different tech tools to the game. And it's taking a job that took 3 hours, it's now taking 15 minutes. So I think for me, it's a company that's not looking at its own tech journey is not going to be around in the next 5 to 10 years. That's my.
You think as short as that?
I think it's as short as that, because when you see what's already happened with Copilot, for example, or AI, since it's come out, I mean, it's been astounding, right? It's come out. It's been such a short period of time, and it's already transforming our industries to such a big degree. If I look in what Microsoft has done with Copilot, how it's already embedded all of those features into our tools, you no longer need someone to take minutes. Your action points are done, your emails are summarized, and key takeouts are being given to you. And then that's just the beginning. Reports are being written, emails are being written. I think in the next 5 years, you're going to have a shadow version of yourself as a co-pilot doing all that low-level stuff. And I think if you don't get into this tech now, my worry is that it's going to become so complex that by then you might battle to get into it. But I encourage every business, every client we have, to go on this digital journey, because the quicker you get into it, the better it is for you. Yeah. It's like almost 15 years ago, people spoke about a website. Yes. Do I need a website?
Yeah.
Now no one even asks.
It's a no-brainer.
And do I need a Facebook page or Instagram page? It's like a no-brainer.
Yes.
And I think for me, again, this is a wave that's sweeping. It's you want to decide if you want to be on that wave or if you will be taken out by it. It's as simple as that.
So what do you say to the guys? So I'll stay in the accounting space just because it's an easy comparison.
Sure.
what would you say to the guys that are sort of that old school, it's almost like they're writing the ledger.
Yeah.
They're not moving on to the more cloud-based accounting software. What do you say to them? Do you say like, hello, wake up? Or do you say, guys, keep trying? Like,
wake up. Yeah. No, look, for me, I think the bigger consideration is we should always be client-centric. So your future client, maybe you've got a 70-year-old client who still likes his books to be done manually, or someone, he's in his late 50s, who's used to that old way. But if you want your business to be future-proof, and your client, you're looking at your future client, and your future client's 30 years old these days, there's no way that a 22-year-old kid starting a business now will say, I want to go and run manual ledgers. They're going onto one of the cloud accounting platforms, because that's how young people think. They want to be, in real time. They want everything to be running there and then, and it also automates so much of your day. So it changes your processes. So, we, in our firm, we took that fundamental decision a couple of years ago to say we are moving our clients onto a cloud-based platform, because that's the way things should be done in the future. It just makes perfect sense. Why do you have to wait for someone to write something up, send it to you, then you look at it, then you send it to someone else, when you've got everything sitting
right there
in a cloud environment? So for firms, accounting firms, bookkeeping firms that haven't migrated, I would encourage you to start doing it from tomorrow, because again, I think in the next 5 years, you're not going to have these traditional systems left. That's my view.
My thoughts are in a similar line. One of the spaces where we sort of end up talking to people a bunch is in the payroll space. People are still sitting with local servers, dealing with their payrolls, and I keep going, but why?
Yeah.
Why doesn't business want to shift? Maybe it's just a little bit of time to catch up.
And it's habits. I think often it's the perception of security, right? To say, well, it sits on a machine, no one can get into it.
And I can see the machine.
But the risks that come with it, because usually you find it's one person, it's got password access to that computer.
Yeah.
It's one machine, it can be stolen, all the data's gone. So, usually for me, it's more of a cognitive process, because everyone knows the right answer is to have it stored on a platform that's secure in the cloud. A couple of stakeholders can get into it. You can't also outpace security systems designed by the big guys.
Yeah, sure.
You're sitting in your business and you're running a little server in a back room somewhere. I'll battle to see how that's more secure. In this day and age.
I agree with you 100%. When you mentioned the big guys, you guys are a big guy. So while you're dealing with you're a big firm, you've got multiple parts to you. You've got Ignite, which is a cloud-based business. I'm assuming part of your thoughts when you made this shift. Do you have any advice for a small business who wants to become a bigger one? How they could make that journey? Some things that they could think about it, or stuff that they could change in their habits on a daily.
I think it's, first of all, starts with the entrepreneur and the business owner. You need to have a roadmap of where you want to be and where you want to go, and because there are seasons to everything. And I think when you are small and you're bootstrapping it, and then that's one mentality. Once you get enough clients, you've stabilized your cash flows, you've got a nice team of a couple of people, you're still pretty much on top of everything. And I think a growth decision is a conscious decision, because it takes time, it takes effort, it takes funding, which is also very important.
Sure.
It's not cheap to grow, because you need to seed skill sets before the money might come in.
Yes.
Very often you find when people grow haphazardly, that runs away from them a little bit, and then cash flows become a big concern. But I think the bigger thing than cash flows is the mindset of the leaders, that the leaders also need to learn to let go of certain functions, and for the benefit of allowing a business to grow, you have to trust your people, and you can't be everywhere at the same time. And I sometimes find that it's the business owners who are sometimes the roadblocks in allowing their businesses to grow. I've got one client who emigrated to Australia, and he had a business here, still has it here. Now he lives in Australia, opened up a second business there. This business is ticking along, and he said to me, he wishes that he let the reins go earlier,
Okay.
Because when he was here, he had nothing else to do. So he would be in the business every single day. But obviously the people were capable, able to do everything. Imagine if he allowed that business to run and he started a second business 15 years ago here.
Yes.
He probably would have had 3 businesses here and then moved to Australia. So I think often we romanticize as business owners our own importance in the business. And to allow it to grow, you need to learn to give certain things up and focus on elements of your business, but not on everything in your business.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think often also we forget how many mistakes we've made along the way. So we got to allow people to make mistakes as well. If you put someone in a role, they will make mistakes, because so will you, or you won't get to it because you're a bottleneck.
The truth is, we do it every single day, right? You make a mistake all the time. You just don't know it today. You only know later.
Exactly.
The decision you make today could be a great one. It could be a terrible one. You'll figure it out over time.
Yeah. And I think it maybe comes back to like manifesting things, or some people use, different tools. Go to a business coach, manifesting. But I think there is something powerful about even just taking a piece of paper and writing your ideas down, saying, where do I want to be in 5 years' time? Where do I want my business to be? And I often find if you at least put that down, 8 out of 10 times you'll probably get there. But it's very different from having something here to actually writing it down. And I just say, go write it down and come back, and then let's talk about that. And you find that a strategy crystallizes itself very quickly.
Do you think that the act of writing it down, sort of when you read it back, like, is it realistic? Is it not realistic? Or do you think that it's, you've mentioned manifestation, so I'm assuming you believe quite well in the power of the mind and all those things, and because you believe in people. So would you say to, entrepreneurs running business who want to grow, would you say to them, write it down, but then when you read it back, if it doesn't ring true, let it go?
Yeah. And also don't be scared. I think one of the exercises we did in our firm a couple of years back, we actually went through an exercise, and we used a fantastic guy, Mike Friedman, to help us with the process. And he said to us, guys, put some numbers on the board. And, we're accountants, so we inherently are risk averse. We're not optimistic, and we never want to fail. So whatever numbers we post on the board, we're not comfortable putting a number on the board because we'll be held accountable. And B, inherently we moderate our own ambition because we don't want to fail. So I'd rather put a number on, even if it looks aggressive, that I know is still achievable.
Okay.
And I think to a big degree that's the difference between some professionals and real business owners. I think a real entrepreneur is far more able to take risk on. I think we as professionals, what our idea of risk is still moderated risk. But I think there is something powerful about writing those numbers down, because even in our firm when we did it, we threshed it out. We came back a week later. We looked at the numbers. We said, does it make sense, the number of people and the turnover? And we really did actually outrun those numbers. We did better than that. But just having that mentality, often what I found is sitting in meetings with our partners, we would say, guys, we can't think today like we're a firm of today. We've already got to start thinking like the firm of the next 2 years.
Sure.
What's our size going to be? So if I'm a 50-man firm today, I want to be 100 people in 2 years' time. You already want to start thinking like you're a 100-man business or firm.
Okay.
And I often find that writing down helps you to kind of see where you're going to go.
Okay.
And it's kind of maybe self-fulfills itself along some way.
Now, just a question for you, because you said, you regarded yourself as an accountant and a professional and somebody who's a bit more risk averse in that example. But you don't strike me as that. You're a positive person. You're a people's person. Have you been on the entrepreneur side of the table at all?
Yeah, I have. Look, I think that there is a misnomer with accountants. I think we need like a suits show for accountants because I think at lawyers and the legal profession, they're not all happy running around, and Harvey walks around with no laptop, no briefcase even. We need a cool show about an accountant that like just walks around in designer suits. But I do think that there are different types of accountants because people have got different personalities. And one of the things we also did in our firm, we work quite a lot with enneagrams, and we actually want to understand our people's personalities, because just because someone did a BCom and became a CA or did cyber articles doesn't mean that we're the same. You know, we could have underlying different personalities. So I think it's really playing to your strengths and what you're good at. Some people love people, some people don't love people as much, but they're better on the technical side of things. Personally, I think I've always been outgoing, enjoyed people. I find that, you know, my profession, the BCom and a CA stream, was a fantastic grounding tool in terms of understanding business. But I still think what drives me is the people side more. So yeah, I think that, you know, I came out of the Big Four environment. I moved into a mid-tier network, and I like that agility. It's more of a business-minded, mentality. We did start PKF Ignite, which is our own cloud accounting-based platform, which is really aimed at this, smaller business market, because very often, mid-tier groups can be a little bit intimidating to smaller businesses, because we just like big blue, very boring sometimes, and so Ignite was a specific platform aimed to be a little bit more open and friendly to the small business market. But I mean, I've had one or two other businesses, in my personal capacity as well. But I think for me, it's the people side that I enjoy more than the entrepreneurship side.
Okay. So, question for you while I wrap this up. On your PKF Ignite side, because that's aimed at the smaller business, and it's a selfish question because I love to talk about the technology. Are you guys prescriptive in your tech? Do you say to somebody, in order to work with Ignite, you must use core technology, or do you solve their problem piece by piece?
So we have the core app stack that we like to use, but we are not fully prescriptive. And I think one of the when we created our founding documents, we said we never want to be a house only selling this brand or that brand, because ultimately it should be about solving client problems and giving clients solutions. So it is more about finding the right solution for the client. If Xero might not be the right solution for a client, you might go somewhere else. Or you might find that they don't want to use Dex, they want to use, nothing or something else. Or if we layer it with different payroll systems or reporting tools, it's really what speaks to the client. And clients are different, and they're people. And again, I think it's very difficult. I think for scales of economy, it's good to package, but our philosophy was always one of bespoke. Because I think in this age of digital, people still want to be seen and heard as humans. And the more digital we become, the more that people crave that human experience. And we consciously didn't want to position ourselves as just selling one product. It's all about what we've always been doing, is creating bespoke solutions, but now we're underpinning it with technology.
Brilliant. Last one. Just what can tech do better? And again, like I said, these last ones are just selfish. What do you think tech can do better to provide itself to the industry? Because we see it all the time. Onboarding customers onto tech, it's a hurdle. It's something that we're always trying to do better. But what do you think tech could do better?
And I think I've been on both sides of it. I think I've been on sides where we putting tech into our clients' processes and companies, and I've been on the other side where we're buying tech. I think very often when you are buying tech, you are uncertain. And I think often technical people tend to maybe forget that this isn't a process that a company goes through every single month. For example, say with Nagging Panda, all of a sudden my clients might not get an email from my debtors team, they might get an email from Nagging Panda. So often it's the cognitive side of things that needs to be discussed. And, I think you guys do it particularly well. But I think some other software providers, sometimes I find they're more focused on the sale, because their teams are so divided. They've got client acquisition teams, client success team, this and this and this. So you almost find that it's let's bring you on is more of the conversation than how can we solve your problem. And I often find it's if tech people spend more time to understand the customer or the client, and not rush into proposing a solution and then say, well, is my product actually right for you?
Okay.
You know, and I often find that you get I think one of the challenges of the industry is there's a lot of cold calling as well at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to kind of just shut off. I mean, I get these things all the time on LinkedIn or whatever, and you're like, I don't even want to speak to someone, you know, and I think often it could be a good solution,
Yes.
but just kind of turns you off because you've had 300 emails and 20 LinkedIn messages,
Yeah.
and you kind of then have that mentality of just going, I'm not even interested. So I do think it's probably the cognitive side, you know, the human side that needs to come out a bit more. But I actually think tech industry to a big degree has done a much better job. Especially the new fintech companies, I think are far more acutely aware of that. I think if you look at the legacy big businesses, that's where they were, I think, they're almost more comfortable speaking. It's like IT people speaking to IT people, right?
Yes.
Where I think fintech companies such as yours are far more positioned at speaking to business owners and business people. And it's a different conversation.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And Waldek, thanks
Brilliant.
for being on our show on Thrive Talk. Guys, I hope everybody out there found this valuable and knowledgeable. I know I enjoyed this conversation. So as always, Thrive Talk will aim to bring you insightful entrepreneurs, founders, experts, professionals, everybody to help you shift your business from surviving to thriving. See you next time.